smaller group, much healthier, much, more intimate. I enjoy it. It's always, it's a conversation, not a presentation. For today's talk, especially a smaller group, I'm probably going to do more telling us some stories than I am going to really just present for something. Because one of the things about this journey engagement topic is that, it falls to people in our kind of roles, in training roles a lot of times to make a change in the organization. Why is that? Because a lot of people in a lot of organizations assume that when there's a change, it's just a bunch of training and some emails to back in something. Say, hey, here's what we did, here's how to use the new software, go forth and be prosperous. And as we all know, that doesn't work so well. This topic of journey management, that actually leads into it very well because I didn't come up with this term. My co-author, Joe Washington, I brought some books up here before him. We did not create this term. Actually, the first time I was exposed to it was about 15 years ago. I was interviewing with a company called then called Years Consulting, which is in Accenture, which, if you're familiar with consulting firms or golf tournaments, you should have heard of it. But I was talking to a guy there, he was a partner, and he said, well, so what are you doing? He goes, well, I'm running a journey management office for this big client. And I said, well, what's journey management? And he said, well, it's the same thing as change management, but the client that we're going to doesn't like the term change management, so we're calling it journey management. That was my first exposure to the term. And if you go to Accenture or Deloitte or some other big consulting firms' websites, you may see the word journey management, but if you look at what's deep involved in it, it's the same training, communication, and back-end technology change that you see that they've always had. And that was my first exposure to it. I thought, well, that sounds neat. And fast forward to about, I guess it's 10 years ago now, I was with a client, it was a Department of Defense client. We were doing a big change there where we were implementing a large customer relationship management software solution. We're talking about change for the executive sponsor, and she kept going, well, this is neat, but what's involved? And we're talking about it, we're saying all the normal stuff, it's like there's training, and there's this, there's that, there's user adoption, all this kind of stuff. And she said, you know what? It's like you're telling me you're going to dinner, but all you're telling me is you're getting food. You're not telling me what flavor, you're not telling me what fish, you're not telling me what vegetables. Because how do you know I'm not a vegetarian, you're trying to serve me a steak? And that kind of hit me. And the funny part is this particular client, she actually became our dissertation students who just graduated front and center. And she really kind of pushed me to start thinking about what is this change thing? About a couple of years later, I started working with Joe Washington, my co-author on this book. She was my client. I was her consultant at a large pharmaceutical firm on the East Coast, which I won't name for legal reasons, but I guarantee you've heard of it. And you've seen her advertising. So it's a big one. And what we were doing there is we were managing several big changes. And it suddenly hit us that it's not about one change. It's about that journey from point A to point B. And it's all those little changes that built up to it that get you where you want the organization to go. And that's really where the term journey management started taking on life of its own. And saying, you know what, let's put some meat on the bone. Let's put some wood behind the arrow. We kind of think about what goes into being where you do this organization. Because so often we take it as a tactical one-time thing that doesn't really do us where we have to go. And that was kind of the auspice of growing this out. And Jill and I started working on some stuff. Just for sake of full disclosure, what we created this thing was, we started going through, I kind of OCD about taking notes over the years. And so either in a notebook or a computer, I have a bunch of notes over the years, different activities. She does the same thing. So we started looking through all those. We started calling friends of ours, saying, hey, what worked, what didn't work. We did what research scientists would call a phenomenology or a qualitative approach, which are big words for saying we didn't run any statistics, we just kind of looked at it, saw what popped out, we looked for patterns, and that's how we came up with this. So it's not like a big study, it's not like it was very formal, but what we did is we said, what is really going on? What's that lived experience? That's how we came up with this. So does that make sense? Before stuff that, or level set that, so it's what's came from. So what did we find out in doing this research and this investigation? We found out that change is really 5 things. It's difficult, it's a distraction, it's unwanted, it's something to avoid that most people want to see taken, and it limits our ability to succeed. This is what most people think about change. They think that if we're going through a change, it's a problem. Why do they think this? Well, because when you're going through a change, it's not easy. You have to take steps. You have to manage it. You have to address it. You have to move forward. And the problem is, again, as trainers, you all know this, most of the time it is, oh, we're doing this change. About 80% of the time it's a software change, let's be honest with ourselves. They say, okay, well, we're going to slap this on next date. We're going to put you through an hour of training or new process procedure that may or may not make sense. It may or may not work, which we'll talk about that in a minute. And then we're going to send out 2 or 3 emails saying you should use this the next day, and then we're going to move on. And in the book, we refer to that as we call the Field of Dreams fallacy. So anybody ever seen the movie Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner? Okay, everybody remember that movie? Some voice talks to him, if you build it, they will come. That is a fallacy. It's not true. It isn't working organizations. But we try to do it day in, day out. And ironically, the fact that that's what creates this vision, there's ongoing research. Let's get some guy named Chris Worley here. You get a chance to talk to Chris. He's a really funny guy. He's a professor at USC. Just really brilliant people you talk to and go, how are you so smart and so funny at the same time, right? But publishes lots of stuff. I'm Googling him. I think he's got some neat videos on YouTube. And he did some work on that. He found that for most organizations, the ability to change and evolve and grow with their market is the single greatest strategic differentiator. And I'm going to repeat that, that's very important. An ability of an organization to grow and evolve is the single greatest differentiator of their strategic ability to survive. I'll give you a case in point. Kodak. You know about Kodak, right? Where's Kodak at today? They're darn out of business. Why? Because for years they would not adapt to the change from photographs to digital. Now they've done some things, they're moving forward, but they're not what they once were. Anybody here got an iPhone? How many times, why did Apple survive? Because Apple adapted quickly. The companies that are doing Droid, they adapted quickly. BlackBerry. Yeah, no, that's what I said. Yeah, right, shaking my head. Because they adapted quickly. Because they couldn't change with the market. They couldn't grow at all. So there's example after example of why it's so important for an organization to grow and evolve. So, when is change beneficial? And this tells us when change is beneficial. That's the external environment, this is the internal environment. Okay? So when can we make change beneficial internally? Well, first of all, it has to be actively managed. Okay? Change will happen, and we can choose to manage it, or we can choose to let it happen to us. I always compare it to the whole thing where we can grow healthy, or we can not grow. We grow healthy. It's the world moves towards atrophy, so you move to be things will move to chaos if you don't manage it. When there's an evaluation of the outcomes, we'll talk a little bit about this. Most of the time we do changes, most of this training, how often do we do training to back in a change and no one evaluates either A, if it's what can be done, or B, if it achieves the outcomes that need to happen. And we can do the same thing over and over and over again. I think it was Einstein said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So we keep doing the same stuff. Well, I'm hoping that this helps show a different way to do it, but a lot of the companies keep doing the same thing. The other thing it has to be is, has to maximize adoption and benefit realization. And we'll talk about what that means in a little bit. Adoption means this. Adoption is the people in the organization using the new tools, the new techniques, the new processes that are being presented. Benefit realization, and we'll talk about this a little bit, is the business value of the change. One of the things that we'll talk about in a few slides is that people don't really like to apply numbers to change. And when you go to an executive and you say, I want to spend money on managing this change, they'll go, what am I getting out of it? And the reason why they ask that is because historically, for the reason we're going to talk about, there hasn't been business value. It's been an expense, not an investment. And one of the things I want you to walk away from today is that if you manage change right, it's an investment, not an expense. And by investment, I mean you put money into it, you'll get more out of it than you invest. Make sense? Questions? So, types of change. We break this down into 3 kinds of change. This is very, very important because you have to manage each one a little bit differently. The first one is tactical change. And this is really, again, like it says, it's finite in scope. The best example is the accounting system. a new CRM system, whatever. It's a new thing in a small part. Okay? The second kind of change is strategic. This is where the organization makes a broad number of changes to move forward. Delta Airlines. Anybody ever fly Delta? Anybody here flown over any of the years? As a consultant, I fly a ton. I mean, I haven't flown that much last couple of years, and they should say home more, but over the years, last 18 years, I've flown way too many miles. And I remember talking about 10 years ago that consultants, unless you live in Atlanta or Cincinnati where the Delta hubs, you would not get on a Delta plane if you avoid it. I mean, the joke was this different, don't ever leave the airport. Now, I've flown Delta a lot last couple of years, and I want to tell you that they have improved dramatically. Why? Because they made a strategic change to improve making themselves better. And a lot of things went into that, but it was a strategic overall shift. And another example was the merger. American Airlines and US Air are now merging. Now, as a loyal American Airlines customer, I'm a little worried about how it's going to work because US and American have different reputations. I hope it goes better than the Continental United merger, but we'll see. But those are the kinds of mergers we look at, things we look at. The last one is evolutionary change. And this is basically where the market evolves. Again, talk about things like examples of, like, say, Kodak, BlackBerry. The market evolves, and the organization has to either change with it, or they're going to be in trouble. One of the examples I've used for this is the move from mainframe to PC to cloud. You guys know what that means, right? So computers, you have their desktop, they think the basement, hard cord goes down, we'll call that. Then everybody went to a PC on the desktop. Now they go to the cloud where it's all in some ether, which ironically is just like a virtual mainframe. So it's kind of the back of the future, but with, a lot of stuff. So. And actually, you guys know the term cloud computing I kind of come up with, right? I don't know if it's true or not. I have a buddy of mine who's a hardcore tech. Claims that somebody said in an off-field market, some speech several years ago at one of the tech conferences, and it just stuck. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the claim. So that shows you how things are kind of work. Again, questions on that? Thoughts? So let's talk about journey management. What is journey management? So journey management, and how we use it, not the other way where it's just a replacement for change management, is some client doesn't like it, is a process of assessing the impacts of major organizational changes, and then actively managing the transition. So you're assessing and then you're actively managing. And then you're trying to maximize the positive impacts and minimize the negative results. Now, we are not saying that if you do this, change will not be hard. We're not saying people won't complain. We're not saying people won't like it. Okay? There's going to be folks, no matter what change you make, we'll talk about this in a little bit, do not like the change. They're going to complain, they're going to make the neck, they're going to like it. What this does is it tries to minimize that so it's manageable, as opposed to having the whole place ready to write on. Which I've been to a place where that happens, and it's not good. And of course, it's also a book. So, I have copies here for those who want to pick them up. I only bought 5 today because that's all I have left in my closet. I've got a little more. But first come, first serve, right? So, how does this compare to traditional change management? Again, we're not just replacing the term, we're trying to make something different. Number one is, it is strategical, well, that's not more present now. It's strategic versus tactical. So that means that we're not looking at just this one little bit, we're looking at how it impacts that whole part of the business. Number two, the view of analysis is the whole enterprise. What does that mean? Well, that's big, business professor consultant speak for, we're looking at that whole thing. If you ever read Peterson's Fifth Discipline, that's the kind of thing. It's that whole system, not just the organization itself, but the customers, the suppliers. Let's take all that into account. We may not impact them all, we may not take any action towards them, but what we're planning is considering that as part of our effort. It's integrated across the functional areas. This is a really critical point. Again, like story. Years ago, I was in this company. We were doing a customer relationship management system. And this one, they sold pipes and stuff, right? We're putting this thing in. At the same time, unbeknownst to us, they are installing a new travel management system. Okay? They wouldn't know. So the CRM goes live on like a Tuesday of whatever this month was, the first Tuesday. The travel management system goes in place the second Wednesday of the same month. Do you think that would cause a problem? This is why I love you guys. Because how many times I go, no, not really. Because the thing is, for some folks, if you're a sales rep and all you do is travel, intercept the CRM, and you've got a new system in 2 weeks, it's going to kill you. So and that actually did. It blew up. Neither system knew about each other. It was a huge mess. And so this tries to take that into account. Another thing we do is it is a strategic leading the way approach. I was having a conversation with someone the other day about a company on the East Coast, but they're going through, they have a bunch of different projects they're managing, and they're thinking about installing a PMO, or a project management office. And what myself and this person are talking about doing is coming in and saying, you know what, don't do a PMO, do a JMO, a journey management office. Which means that as opposed to worrying about is everybody using the exact same way to calculate estimates complete and all this kind of stuff, which you should do anyway if you're using the project management methodology. But instead of worrying about all those little details, let the project managers worry about that and not burden them with this additional reporting stuff. Let's worry about the whole overall journey and make sure it's all coordinated so you've got 10 things going on at once. And let's manage it that way. And it's kind of funny because it's one of those things you don't think about till you say it. And if somebody says, why didn't anybody else tell us this? That's because we haven't done this before. We're sort of this way. And the cool times we had this in other places, we found it makes a huge, huge difference. And I know one place when this was done, we trained one in the JMO, they set one up, and within 12 months, they dissolved the PMO and said, go ahead, get it off. Fix it. So it kind of tells you how important this kind of stuff can be. So, let's talk about the consistent approach across the enterprise. Well, it's done by 5 steps. Okay, the first one is awareness. Okay, and that is recognizing the need for the change. And we'll talk in a few minutes about how we do that. And again, this is one of the very important parts because so often we will say we're going to install this thing. We're not going to tell anybody why. We're not going to know what we're doing. And I'll tell you guys a story in a minute about. When I'll tell you now, but it's how we get awareness. Number 2 is planning. This is the setting up. This is where we kind of integrate with project management activities. Number 3 is readiness. Project management activities, the planning that plays, talks about what we do for those who want to implement the change. Readiness, which is often overlooked, is how we manage those who are impacted by the change. How many times do we feel like change happens to us rather than for us? This is trying to make sure it's happening for us. Coordination, which again, that's across the enterprise, detail. And then execution. And ironically, this is the place where we don't really worry as much about the details, because if we do these other 4 correctly, this should be set up to take care of itself. That just gets into reporting and focus on outcomes. But if you have the risk of taking care of that, execution should happen. So, let's talk about awareness. Awareness is recognizing the need for change. One of the examples is you must remember change being successful. You guys are a digital equipment corporation? Who here doesn't have a digital equipment corporation? Okay, I'll tell you this one. Okay. So, do you know what a VAX is? Okay, so digital equipment corporation was made this big, giant thing called VAX. It was the primary computer, right? It was the favorite one. Their CEO at one point said, why would anyone want a personal computer in their house? That really is. So whereas everybody else, like IBM or AT&T, well, Dell existed at that point, but everybody else was making these personal computers, they didn't bother with it. Lost market share all over the place. Eventually got bought by Compaq, which got bought by Hewlett-Packard. So they don't exist anymore. Another kind of change is there is an external driver. Sarbanes-Oxley for the Affordable Care Act. We had some folks just Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I'm sure there are no changes whatsoever going on there as a result of the Affordable Care Act.
Ring mom.
Yeah, I said that in front of some HR folks last year, and I thought they were going to throw things at me. Like, no, really, so there's an external driver. Sarbanes-Oxley, same thing. There's more, trust me folks, there's more laws coming out. That's what it is, really more. And the last one is a new direction, a new CEO. Years ago, when I was at Accenture, at Hewlett-Packard, our then CEO, Mark Hurd, got fired for some misbehavior, and And they hired a guy named Leo Apotheker who comes in and decides, we're going to dump all this hardware stuff that's made our way, and we're going to start doing software and consulting. Which sounded neat to me, because I was a consulting guy, but it didn't work out so well. I think he lasted 9 months. But if he had managed to change properly, maybe he'd still be there. You don't know. So how do we manage awareness? We manage it at 2 levels. The first level is leadership, and the second level is awareness. Those aren't very good technical terms, but that's what we're going to call them. And this is actually new information that we just found. After we published the book, we went back and started calling some folks and, hey, does this look real, does this look right? And one of the things we found was, one of the things we missed, and I'm actually talking to Jill, my co-author, about when we're going to do the second version of this. One of the things we missed that we're starting to add in is that there's really 2 levels of awareness. This first level is leadership. Leadership is very simply those who commit resources to the effort. Okay? So whoever's got signatory authority, either buy a consultant, who commit their time, go purchase whatever software you need, whoever has that commitment, you have to get them to commit to the change flow. And the awareness, everyone else, that's just all the people that have to be impacted by it. So it's kind of like pre-readiness almost, but the readiness is opposed to it. So how do we do this? Well, number one, for leadership, we focus on the business benefits. And again, this doesn't matter if you're a for-profit business, if you're a not-for-profit, if you're governmental. The fact is, some resources, be it time, be it people, be it whatever, be it just a room to stick everybody on this and talk about it, some resources have to be committed to manage the change. And so whoever commits and has that authority, that's the leadership. And we're focused on business benefits. Everyone else, it's creating a vision of the outcome. So how do we do this? Well, the leadership one's kind of funny because, like I said before, everyone tries to talk about the business value of change. And everyone's been trying to quantify it at some point. And doing research on this, I actually found there's one study that everybody keeps citing that was supposedly the McKinsey Quarterly in 2002 that said that for every dollar you spend on effective change, you get a net benefit of 43 cents. But for every dollar you spend on ineffective change, you have a net loss of 63 cents. Now, here's the thing with the study though, it gets cited a lot, but I went to McKinsey Quarterly from 2002, 2001, 2003, and I had yet to find that study. What I traced it back to is there's an online business journal out of California that somebody quoted that in there. They even listed the authors of it, and everybody saw that online and he republished it. So you've probably seen it, don't quote that. I wish I could find it. Maybe it was in an advertisement or something in the print version, I don't know. But if you go to the online EBSCO host the journal article thing, and trust me, I've looked twice. What I did find though, which is actually more interesting, is I found some stuff by a think tank in the UK from 2010 called Change Function. And what they found, this is really fascinating, is that for effective change management, okay, for small projects, which they had under $167,000, and the reason why they had $167,000 is they said 200 pounds because they're British. And so with UK conversion rates, that's what it comes out to, just full disclosure. The benefit ratio is 1 to 2. So for every $1 you spend effectively on change, you get a $2 benefit. That's for a small project, under 100,000 pounds, $167,000. For large projects, i.e. anything over that, it can be up to a 1 to 6.5 ratio. So for every dollar you spend on effectively managing change, you'll get a $6.50 benefit from that. And looking through the research, what that means is that's everything from increased productivity, that is reduced waste. It was a very robust study. They went across several different projects to figure this out. So whenever anybody asks you, what's the value of effective change, you say, well, for a small project, it's 1.2. For a big project, it's 1.65. And interestingly, this is the important part, the bigger the project, the higher that ratio is. So if you're just doing a little, that makes sense though when you've been through it. If you, like say, a small office of 10 people, you put some new software in, you don't spend much time on change management, it probably isn't going to be that big of a benefit to you. But let's say you're even say 1,000-person company. You're installing some new software. You need to really do that. And here's the reason why it works that way. If you're a small company, you have easy span of control, and you just answer questions real easily, it doesn't take away. But if you're a big company and you have to have formalized procedures, and you don't have those in place, what people want to do? They're going to default doing whatever they want to before. You know, we were doing some work in Canada a few years ago, and we were installing a new reporting system. Despite somewhat best efforts to convince leadership otherwise, we didn't manage to change right. And what happened? For the first 6 months that system was installed, people kept using the old system. And then they would go and use the new system to just so they'd done it. So what you had, as opposed to increased efficiency, you had double inefficiency. Why? Because we wanted to change right. But again, these are pretty powerful numbers. And if your boss ever asks, why should I invest in this, I would take this out. So, what's vision mean? Well, vision means making a graphic to represent what things mean. So, who knows what this means? Who has seen this as an attempt to, something like this as an attempt to create a vision for a project?
It's the world we live in. Yeah.
Right, okay, well, exactly. Here's the thing, and I bring this up because this is an actual graphic from a project I did in New Jersey a few years ago, where what we were doing was we were installing an enterprise data warehouse for a pharmaceutical firm. Okay. Enterprise data warehouse is basically a fancy term for put all that in one place so you can then analyze it and create insights, right? So when I show up on site, the enterprise architecture guy has made this, he's like, well, this is what we're showing everybody to understand what's happening. And I said, how's that working out for you? And of course he was like, oh no, it's working out great. They get the architecture. And it was funny because we had a meeting later on that day where we were solving what we were solving, they call it a teaser, which is, and one of the marketing guys was, what's the teaser? And then the tech guy was like, oh, it has spoos and spos and flux capacitors and all this kind of mess and all that. Good. I said, it's refrigerator-sized computer in your basement, okay? That's all you got. But this is what they were trying to explain to folks. Would you like to see what it looked like once we got done trying to make something where the non-teams could understand it?
Yes.
Does this make more sense? This is all it is. It's basically, okay, so right now you've got this mess right here with data. What we're doing is we're going to turn that into information, do some analytics, which creates knowledge and insight for decision. That's that. And this is the same thing. Which graphic do you think got us more traction for buy-in and awareness of why we would do this from the folks in that organization? Yeah. It's funny, there's a guy telling me, you guys watch TED Talks? Okay, they're going to get you to watch TED Talks. TED's this neat conference they do several years. It's called Technology, Entrepreneurship, and Design. They have visionary speakers come in and talk about different stuff. There's a guy named Ted Bujek who works for a company called Autodesk. And he did one in 2009 about, I guess the year before they had this neat thing where they had these graphic artists who, during every session, would try to draw one picture representing the gist of what each speaker talked about. They go off the wall. It was a really neat thing. And what Ted was talking about was how our brains, and again, as a psychologist, you think you're more aware of this, that our brains are trained to process things efficiently and quickly. So for us to understand something, we need to have something that's very short, like that mental model. And so when we're driving to change, what's really focused on this mental model is that's how we get people to buy in and move forward and understand. And that's where it's coming from. Makes sense? So if you take not much else away, remember, we want this, not this. All right, so let's talk about planning. Planning, if you've been through project management, that's something that's already spoken before, so I'm not going to belabor this too much. But planning is really about a couple things. It's one, clarifying the goals. It's about resourcing, which is basically saying, what can we make this happen? It's about scheduling, which is getting things lined up. And it's about baseline, which is saying, where do we start? And if you guys have been through PMBOK or Project Management Body Knowledge or Project Management Institute type stuff, this should all seem very familiar, so we're not going to put this source too much. But we're going to have a couple key things, which is in the defining phase, it goes back to our mental models, which is making a picture of how we're going to achieve it. And there's a couple of real ones that we used over the years. This one is one we used for a project. We said, we asked some key questions like, where do you want to be in 5 years? What's the message we create? What's the how we manage it? Whereas that previous mental model, where we showed everybody the awareness phase, that is the there we want to get to. These mental models are helping us understand how we get from here to there. And that's why people say, well, why do you need two? Well, because there's two different approaches. One's people who are impacted by, and there's people who are doing it. So here's what we use for that. This one actually is from my work at a big consulting firm, Michelle Lane name was very technology focused. And again, let's compare this to that, and you can guess which one got more traction. Simplified models. Our brains are programmed to process quickly, so we simplify. What I like to use, and this is one that actually came from another project a few years ago, is this one that looks at things like the strategy, the journey drivers, change processes, technology accelerators, which again, technology should be an accelerator, not a driver. You know, if you ever met someone who works for SAP, they'll disagree with that. But technology should be the accelerator of your processes, not the driver. Get the processes and the change right first. I always use the example, the bad cookies example. You know, if you're a company and you've made really bad tasting cookies, but you put some technology in that does it more efficiently, what do you get? More bad cookies, that's right. So this was the, and people say, well, how does this apply to the 5 steps of journey management? Well, if we look at it this way, we can see that awareness ties into the journey drivers and strategy. Readiness ties into the journey drivers and the organizational enablers, which you know, where you guys are going to learn a lot. We also get the planning, we get the coordination, and the execution. So it's, you always want to be able to overlay that so you know what's what. And the reason why I say you overlay is this, so you make sure that you're not missing pieces. One of the key, again, it's a systemic approach when you look at overall coordination. Okay? So planning, again, this is the planning resource. This, you know, this is the MS project chart. You can't read it from there, it's a real chart. And I always tell people when you do that, when you do it in Excel, it doesn't matter. You know, it's just that you have one as a thing. I walked through their project one time and they said, well, we're doing whatever. I said, where's your project plan? And they actually said, oh, what? I said, okay, task number 1, project plan. Now that I'm more senior guy, I want to do stuff I get a lot of early looks as I answer questions like that. All right, so rates. This is an important one that again gets to dealing with those that are impacted by the change. Okay? So let's start this one. So, number 1, the organization has to be prepared before the change. Okay, so it has to be prepared. When I say prepared, I don't just mean mentally, I mean logistically. You know, one of the large system integrators brings me every once in a while now to just kind of do acute quality assurance of their projects. And I got one recently one that they're putting, ironically, SAP into a big construction company. I'm reviewing the stuff, I'm looking at all the organizational change stuff, or they call it OCM. And I'm on the phone with these guys, and I asked 2 questions that got me into big trouble. Well, actually, the boss, who's a friend of mine, liked it, but the team was very mad at it. Because I said, well, number 1, what was the business case for this change? And they were like, we don't know. And the other thing I said, does this thing work the way it's supposed to? Again, I got, not really. Unless you are prepared to move forward with the change because you know what the business case is and the system's working properly. I mean, I'm a big believer in change management, I'm a big believer in all this stuff, but all the change management in the world ain't going to happen if the system doesn't work. That's key. What else do I think about? The people in the organization know what actions they're required to take. Another, again, this same group, it explains why the guy called me again. So the guy calls me one day. He literally called me at 8:30 in the morning. He goes, Jimmy, can you give a call tonight at 7:04? And I thought back to my first day of grad school, and I said, why, Scott? What happened? So we're going through this thing, and I said, well, have you trained these guys on this? They said, yeah, they trained them on the system, but they trained them on the wrong module. Yeah, I wanted to laugh, I was just crying. Yes. Yeah. I mean, these things happen though, folks. I mean, that's why I said, that's why I'm talking to you guys, because you guys get why it matters. The trouble is we don't get listened to enough. I'll be much more disagree with that. So the other thing to think about is there must be a critical mass of individuals in the organization who are willing to change. But this right here is probably one of the biggest ones. You don't have to have everybody on board. You're not going to get everybody on board. If your boss tells you you want everybody on board, you have one of 2 choices. You can A, convince them, let them understand that's not the case, or B, you can smile and nod and walk away and do what you're going to do anyway. But you got to manage your boss. I don't know who your boss is, so that's your decision. But the critical mass is so important, which you guys have read Malcolm Gladwell's book, 2 Point, I'm talking about? Yeah, so Malcolm Gladwell's a funny looking guy, but I wish I could know. But as a book on tipping point, what he talks about is that for every change in society, in the organization, it's not that you have everyone ready to go for it, it's that you have a critical mass of key influencers. And one of the things that we look at in this process is who are our key influencers in this organization? How do we get them bought in? And it's often not who you think it is. There's one organization we found that the biggest influencer in the organization was not the CEO, but the CEO's executive assistant. Because she'd been there for 3 CEOs, and you knew that that was the real power seat. So, what else do you think about? Oh, it's one of those commonly overlooked processes, parts of this process. I have to tell you everything about what we're in the organization. And we're looking at this, and they say it's a mess. I said, what's your readiness strategy? And they go, what's readiness? Yeah. In fact, it's funny, one of the biggest projects I did was, again, the big DoD project I talked about first, where one said, you only tell me you're going to dinner while we're getting food. That was hard to do with readiness because that was a military organization, and readiness in the military means ready to go into fight. So that caused some confusion there. We had to change the terminology to repeat that. But let's talk about resistance. There's 3 kinds of resistance that we need to think about. This is very important thing about who our key influencers are. The one is blind resistance. These are people who just don't want to change because they don't like change. Okay? They just don't like it, they're going to go. Those, they're probably going to leave anyway. Don't worry about it. Next time to change them, next time to talk to them, but you know what? Just let them go. There's a guy named Sean who's a big psychologist, and he says that for every organizational change, they have to expect anywhere from 10 to 40% of your organization to all leave within 24 months afterwards. Or how you manage it. But that's okay because you can replace it with big blood that's there for the new organization. And when I talk to a lot of executives, they really don't like to hear that. But I think for a while they suddenly realize, that makes a big difference. It's not about changing the people, it's not about changing the people. You want to keep the ones you like. If they leave, wish them well, it's normal learning. But you don't want them to go up the works. Political resistance. This one's very interesting. This is where we have the most ability to influence. This is where somebody's afraid of losing something that's important to them. Maybe if it's you're starting an accounting system, you have some bookkeepers who suddenly this will make their job not work as well. I remember years ago when I was at Accenture, they installed a new system that was basically, consulting firms you had your home base and you move project. And they installed a new system that basically used to have people that literally their whole job was to look at a big Excel spreadsheet every day, see what roles are open, who's available in the next month. They installed a new system that eliminated that role. Guess how our list was over that role? And unfortunately, I knew one of the people who was in that role, and that person was not very happy, and I had to put up a lot of complaining about it for about 2 months. But they found this person a new role in the organization, so I'm not sure what the problem was. But that's the biggest thing. With these kind of people, what we have to do is really focus on helping them understand how the change will benefit them, and helping them to see that if it's not a loss, it can be a gain. A lot of it's basically facilitation, therapy, coaching, just it's you got to help them know. The last part, and this is one of the worst ones, is ideological resistance. This is one of the toughest ones to work with. This is where someone feels that this change is going to somehow be different than what the organization needs. So going back to before the example of the DoD organization, we're talking about readiness. This organization, again, they were a supply organization, supply everything from bullets to the war fighters in the U.S. Army. But again, this is in 2004, so we were knee deep in the wars that were back in Afghanistan. And their whole mission was helping the war fighter. And they thought of CRM, because CRM talks about sales and service, as a purely commercial-driven thing. They say, well, commercial folks do CRM for their own benefit. We exist for the warfighter's benefit, not for ours. And so just that thought made them ideologically opposed to the existence of this CRM tool. So we had to spend a lot of time making them realize this wasn't, again, same thing. We're not changing what you do. We're enhancing, making it move forward. And I remember we were in one big meeting where the light bulb kind of got off. there's this huge, we had these monthly meetings with basically all these generals and all these senior executives, and the agency came to a big room, everybody presented, and everybody was going off, getting crazy about it. This one general, the guy that, I had like 2 or 3 stars on his shoulder when he went about the military, that's pretty high up. He basically stands up and goes, I like this help as idea. It sits back down. And suddenly the fact that they realized, okay, it's okay, that guy around the organization, hey, things been going, it was good. So there's that ideology is very important. Any questions on this?
They trusted him.
Exactly. Because he was the goal. He was who they were trying to serve. It's like, oh, well, this guy who literally is the king we're trying to serve. Makes it okay. I guess we're okay. Questions or thoughts on that? All right, so let's talk about resistance. We also have to do a rating assessment. Now, some of these slides and answers, you look at them. A rating assessment is when you go out and you figure out, are we ready or not? Okay? And a lot of people will say, well, we'll go interview 5 people and call that a rating assessment. No, that's not. That's not a rating assessment. That's, that's 5 interviews. Now, you can do rating assessments from inside the organization as interviews, as, focus groups, you can do a survey. You can, but you don't just go, hey, what do you think this changed? The construction thing I talked about the other day, where I wanted to do some QA, I was reviewing their stuff, and I said, okay, well, show me your interview protocols. They said fun things like, why do you feel the change failed? Well, where does that get you from a rating assessment? It's continuing. You can ask real questions about what's there. You can think about the management. Will this system do in the future? Think about the customers. Will it help you serve the customers? There's all these questions I won't go through. That's also the slides ahead. And there's some more here. But it's all these different areas that you need to really ask about, either through reviewing documents or something. But your main thing is you're doing a baseline assessment of where you're at before you start doing all this stuff. Because far too often, again, we just say, you know what? We're going to slap this thing in. We're going to do some training with software and hope it's the right software. And then we're going to go out something else. And folks, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. All right, so let's go on to coordinating. This is one of the most interesting parts of journey management. Okay? One of the key things in journey management is that there's not just one change. There's lots of changes. Now, I took away to marathons, okay? When you train for a marathon, you don't just wake up on a Saturday and say, I'm running a marathon Sunday. Well, I know some people who do, it doesn't go well. I have one friend who does that, but he has also been Ironman like 10 times, so he can do that. Yeah, he's a freak of nature. But for most of us, you have to train. You have to say, okay, I'm doing the World Marathon in March, so I'm going to start training the previous April. There's actually running clubs who do this. And you say, you know what, I want to start doing 1 mile, then 5 miles, then 10 miles. But you're not just changing what you run, you're changing your diet, you're changing your sleep habits, you're changing your lifestyle change. And changing organizations the same way. There's not just one. There's not just an SAP. There's an accounting system. There's a PeopleSoft. There's a new market. There's always something going on. And so one of the key things about journey management is we try to figure out what that map looks like. Okay? And we recognize it's extremely rare for that. We also look at there are too many changes going on at once. Can hog your organization. I talked a while ago about the whole the CRM and the account system on the same day. One of the same things we can have each other. Those things happen all the time. When I was working with Jill, my co-author of this book, what we'll show you now what we came up with, we actually ran into that at her big pharmaceutical firm where they had a new accounting system one day, and at the same time they launched a new website. What you think wouldn't matter, except that they had the bright idea of having the website only hosted on one server over in London, and making it to where all of their stuff went through this website. It crashed the whole company in 3 days. Yeah. And the funny part was on the call, and their CIO, who had since left the company, and he said, well, why is it going so slow? And I said, why is it going to work at other places? Because for those who don't know the way they communicate across, there's literally a big giant fiber cable that runs under the ocean that is the US. And most places do like remote servers and stuff, all this kind of technology, right? But he didn't want to do that. And he said, well, why can't it go faster? They said, well, the information can't travel faster than the speed of light. And supposedly he actually said the words, well, can't we do anything about that? Yeah.
Wow.
Not only Einstein. But the point is, all these things happen. What's it slowing down? So what did we come up with? Well, We came up with something we call a change integration map. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you that this is the simplified version of this. We had one at one point like a spider web with like, I mean, it was bad. This is after about 10 different iterations come up with this methodology. Okay? So just know that. So what we look at, we say, for a change integration map, you have a couple key things. You have down this left side here, you have your functional areas. And someone says, well, what's a functional area? Well, I always say, how many PL centers do you have in your organization? How many profit and loss areas? You have finance, you have HR, you have, or how many VPs? Just whatever your main differentiators are in your organization, you have a level for each one. Okay? So for each one of those, you have what changes are going on. And you have the start dates and the end dates. Okay? And you kind of, these are the exact, they kind of line up each other. So project 1's here, this project 5 started earlier, project 3 is kind of the same thing. Project 4, it's not going to be until for a while. And all these projects are at the same time. And so what you have in this case is kind of a modified Gantt chart. Whereas a Gantt chart shows the details of one project, this is meant to show the summary of all the projects. And again, going into our mental models discussion, this helps us kind of get in there in one key spot. So for each project, you have your start dates. You also have this little green, red, and yellow things. You know, I guess what those are about? What those are doing that?
Status.
Yeah, status. Every executive likes their stoplight chart. Is it red, yellow, or green? Well, we'll call it green. I don't know what that means. We'll call it green. It also has this numbers here, which are percent complete. Which, if you've done much with project management, you're always going to have percent complete and red, yellow, green. That's all you're worried about. And most places usually say red, yellow, green is like on schedule, risk of being off schedule, or off schedule, which is how they usually play that out. Some folks do it different ways. That's kind of what you want just to do. And so for each of these, you can quickly look at this and you can say, you know what, these are, all where we're at. So, project 1, good shape. Project 5, not so much. Project 2, not so much. So the part that's really interesting here, though, is if you look at this, you see across all areas are these little lines. It's really hard to see, like this is a dotted line, that's a dotted line, that's a double solid line. Those are where we draw lines where there's dependencies from one project to another. So for example, project 5 has a line to project 1. Its end date is before that. So project 1's got to finish up with project 5 to finish, it's already in trouble. So even though these guys may think they're in good shape, guess what? Their impact to project 5 means they've got things to worry about. This is where we hit the wall a lot of times in company organizations will change. Now, even though it's a dotted line, I think of an issue. We've got project 4 down here, which is 10%. It thinks it's in good shape. But then this double solid line over here, project 3, which is yellow. Should project 4 worry about project 3? Yes. In traditional change management, would project 4 worry about project 3? Probably not. What's going to happen if this thing gets held up and this is dependent upon it being finished? Suddenly you're going to go from green to red real fast. And who here has ever had to walk into an executive and say, well, I know we were green last week, but they were red. And then you tell them, well, it's so-and-so's fault. First words out of their mouth. Why didn't you know that? This is how we get to that. These are actually really neat because when we first did the pharmaceutical firm, they had one of those big, giant, old HP plotters. And we literally printed these things out on giant plotter paper and started tacking them up all over the buildings. Guess what? Some people started realizing, uh-oh, we got to start coordinating. And they had like, I think, 10 functional areas behind these things. They were just huge. But it's that coordination that makes a huge difference. Make sense? So let's go on this a little bit. Also, everyone having a similar project reporting chart. Who has ever been in an organization and your project reporting is completely different from project to project? Who here has found that useful? No one ever raises their hand for that. I take that back. I was doing this somewhere, and one guy in the back, who was an IT guy, said, oh, it's good for me because I just do whatever I want to. Yeah, I'll wait a minute, right? So, again, this is a simple one. This example in the book. I always tell folks, it doesn't matter what your project reporting looks like from a trade management standpoint. It just matters two things. One, that you have it. And two, that everyone in your organization is using this as a format and consistent metrics. Again, if you say, well, tell me what's red, yellow, or green, you know what that means? Well, then it means nothing. But again, if you say, okay, when it means we're on schedule, that means we might go off schedule, that means we're off schedule. As long as it's consistent, it doesn't matter. That's all that matters. All right, so let's go to executing. This again, it's kind of the last area. I'm not going to be on this too much. If you want to read more guides in the book, or of course, you can also get a PDF of the book if you want. It talks about a few key areas. Number one is managing the resources and risks. And again, this is where it ties back to the project management approach. That's why I said, a lot of times, with the jury management office kind of use service the project management office because they realize that that's the part that needs to be managed at the programmatic level. The other part is enabling performance outcomes, which this will look familiar to some of you guys heard me talk about the performance strategy and all that. And the last one is, again, reporting. One of the things they forget to do a lot of times in most projects and most changes is report what happens. Project reporting is so important because we want to know where we're at and where we're status. So, managing resources. Again, this is kind of my chart, but risk issues. Do we know the difference between a risk and issue? I always love that little space when I ask that. If you're doing project management, so the official term is a risk is something that might happen, will negatively impact the project. An issue is something that has happened, will negatively impact the project. Why is that definition important? Because if you say a bunch of risks, a bunch of low risks, don't worry about it too much. If you have an issue, even if it's a low issue, you probably won't worry about it because it's happened. And it's that potential versus the impact. And again, it's just basic stuff. If you've been through the PMO methodology or PMBOK, this is familiar, so I'm not going to deal with that one constantly your time. Enabling outcomes. If you guys have probably seen this before, if you've been on other talks about performance strategy, which is how do we drive towards the outcomes we want? Okay? This goes back to the things like the training and the other things, which is we have to recognize that people are the ones who have to do these changes. We don't want to live out that field of dreams fallacy. Just because we build it does not mean they will come. So once we get this thing built out, what do we have to look at? What's the knowledge they need? What are the skills they need? What are the abilities they need? What aptitude they need? You know what? Some people just don't get business objects. You know what that is? It's a big point software, so they just don't get it. You know, it looks different than Excel. What's the attitude they need? Let's face it, folks, attitudinal responses to changes is probably one of the greatest predictors of success in these efforts you're going to find. Some folks just don't want to be there. How do you manage that? Well, either you show them it's not that bad, or when they get grumpy and say, well, I'm going to leave, you give them a whole party. A lot. And lastly, the experience. You know, one of the things that we deal with a lot of these kind of changes is a lot of times the roles will shift. And people who before were like the most important person, because of their lack of experience in a certain area, because of their lack of skills, they become less important. Somebody who seemed like they were just kind of playing along, they may have the skills, aptitude to suddenly be the leader. And you have to really take those things into account. They are not pleasant conversations, I'm not going to lie to you. But they have to happen for the success of the organization and success of keeping going otherwise. So, we're about those reporting. This is measuring impact. These are some lovely pictures of actual employee dashboards. Executives love dashboards. You want to make sure they can log in, see one thing, and then move on to whatever else they're doing that day. And drill down. That's what our business obvious. I like that you're laughing at it. So it's the report is how we go through and say what is happening. So we know where we're at, we have that pulse check, and we go from there. So with that, that's my information. What questions do you guys have? I'd love to hear a few minutes left. What questions do you have? What thoughts? What do you think?
What level of people in the organization need to be on your key buy-in? Are you aiming all at the top people that have to buy in, or do you think you just have some support all the way through?
That is a wonderful question. I'm going to first default to a consultant answer. I know your realistic answer. Consultant answer is all depends. The real answer is it all depends on the organization. So ideally, you do want buy-in at all the affected levels. So for example, if we're implementing a new software in a hospital, you do want some of the executive buy-in, you do want the IT buy-in, you do want people who are going to be impacted by it buy-in. And you probably want to get some of their insight into that. But what you don't need to worry about are like, the housekeeping staff. If they're impacted, don't worry about it. I see people try to do this. Well, let's get so-and-so involved. Like, well, they're not impacted by it, so let's get them involved too. No, don't worry about that. However, I will say that there have become a lot of times where we cannot do that for either political or fiscal reasons. And so really what you do is you walk in and say, look, here's what we should have. We should have from the top all the way down to the lowest level that's impacted by this. And even if they're not involved in the decision of whether we should change or not, but let's get them involved in the where are we at as far as the volume change and where are we at as far as this being impactful, is it being useful. You strive for that. You don't always get that. So then what you get is you get the highest level, you get away, you get from the highest level down to the lowest level you can, and just hope that point gets out. Yeah, I wish that I could tell you that it was better than that, but far too often we kind of get stopped. What else? All right. Well, thank you guys. I have some books up here. If everyone talks to me, there's my contact information there. I love Twitter. I don't really tweet that much. I like to tweet like maybe once a week, if that much. I was told I had to tweet to be a consultant, so I was like, hey, here's Twitter. The website's just davidroundgroup.com. If you have any questions, let me shout out reaching out. I appreciate it, and I'll see you guys again.